and welcome to the Candidates Forum. This is a candidate forum for the Democratic primary for State Representative, 17th District of Middlesex. The forum is presented as a collaboration of Lowell Votes, a nonprofit, nonpartisan voter education organization in the city, and Lowell Telemedia Center. I'm Wendy Blom, Executive Director of Lowell Telemedia Center. The questions tonight come from the community members who submitted them to Lowell Votes members, and LTC. And we're so pleased tonight to have with us two of the three candidates running in this primary, Lisa Arnold, Vanna Howard. The incumbent is also running, Representative Dave Nangle, who chose not to participate tonight. The candidates will have an opportunity to introduce themselves in 2-minute opening remarks, and then we'll get into the questions with 1-minute answers. 30-second rebuttals to the other candidates' answers may be requested to me, and my follow-up questions will be allowed 30 seconds as well. And we'll end with 1-minute closing remarks. Mary Torres of Lowell Votes is the timekeeper tonight, and she'll be making noises to let us know when the time is up. Well, we have a lot of questions and only 60 minutes, so we better get started. This first question is an icebreaker. What have you found that's new and fun to do during the pandemic? And we'll start with Lisa Arnold.
Oh boy. I'm learning a new language on Duolingo, so that's fun.
Okay, Vanna.
I'm learning to bake. My son is actually teaching me to bake. He's an amazing cook in the household. He knows how to cook and bake, so I'm learning to bake.
Very good. Okay, well, let's start with the opening comments. Lisa, why don't you start?
All right. Thank you for inviting me to participate, Wendy, for moderating, and to Lowell Vote for hosting this event. I think it's a really great opportunity for people to participate in the civic process. And thanks to everybody who's listening in. Thank you for coming and hearing what we have to say. I've spent the last 2 decades of my career in a Fortune 500 company helping people solve problems. Problems like managing a $1 billion budget and then needing to make a $4 million cut without having to cut any people, or helping a distraught mother find a mental health facility for her teenager on a Friday at 4 p.m. before a long weekend, right after our company decided to change insurance companies. Those are just two of many of the different types of problems that I had to solve. And now I'm running for state representative to put my problem-solving experience to work for the people of the 17th Middlesex and to bring accountability and transparency to the State House. My passion, my motivation for running is mental health. I lost both of my sisters to mental illness. I know what it's like as a family member to watch our loved ones struggle to get access to treatment they need, especially when they're in the middle of a crisis and they don't have the strength to advocate for themselves. As a state rep, I want to increase access to mental health services and to make mental health a comfortable topic of conversation rather than a stigma. I'm also focused on fighting climate change, and I want to see us meet our goals by 2050 or before. I would like to improve public transportation, neighborhood walking and biking infrastructure, and developing affordable housing. These are all issues that have an impact on the health and well-being of our community. As your next state representative, I'm ready to work with you and for you on issues that are important to the people of the 17th Middlesex. Thank you.
Okay, Vanna.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you all tonight. And thank you to all the sponsors, Lowell Votes, Lowell Alliance, Coalition for a Better Acre, and LTC, and moderator Wendy Blom, and all the audience that's tuning in. My name is Vanna Howard, and I am a candidate for the 17th Middlesex District State Representative. For those who don't know me, I am married and the mother of 2 children. My youngest son just graduated from Lowell High School this summer. I'm also a genocide survivor from Cambodia, and as a young woman, experienced homelessness and domestic abuse. I have lived and worked in this community for almost 30 years, starting out at a law firm in Lowell, and then Middlesex and Suffolk County District Attorney's Office for 13 years. And later, I was on the staff of Congresswoman Songer's office for 12 years. And currently, I am at Lowell Community Health Center. Over this time, I have been on every street and every neighborhood here and have been involved professionally and personally, in countless projects, issues, and events which have directly affected the quality of life in our community. While this area has had many ups and downs, over that time, there is no other time to compare to this pandemic and the economic crisis it has caused here. And throughout our state, we have always moved forward, and we will now as well. This is why I decided earlier this year to enter this race, to see to it that this state and its government rise to the challenges our families face as we dig out of this current state of normal. I believe the next representative for this district will need to be able to devote all of her energy and effort towards rebuilding our economy, strengthening and expanding our healthcare system to reach everyone, and see to it that our schools and business can reopen and get back to the core missions. Among my other priorities will be to see to it that the looming foreclosures, evictions crisis is avoided, that the workers in our district are paid a living wage, that the state move towards renewable energies and the eventual elimination of fossil fuels, and that we finally obtain the racial equality we all seek, but which still eludes us so clearly in 2020. Finally, as a bilingual woman of color, I believe that my voice will speak for our diverse community and district, and I will be heard on Beacon Hill as we move through these difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the first question goes to Vanna. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing the district?
Right now, I want to say housing. We need to increase number, of housing units by, public and private partnerships. Taking over eminent domains, abandoned properties. We need development, that of public lands, environment, immigration, you name it, jobs, fair and clear path to citizenship for immigration, jobs. We need to manage, and contain the pandemic, and returning to work done safely, with all deliberate speed. And education, as a mother of a child who just graduated from Lowell High School this summer, who's going to be going to college remotely, and a daughter who has an IEP, who hasn't received her, speech, OT, and since March. And so my husband and I, have been the PT, the OT, and the speech for her since March. So, our children need schooling, and it needs to done safely for them and for everyone at their schools. And housing, environment, immigration, jobs, education, and we need a crisis response, to rely on. We need to rely on science. Right now in this pandemic, we need to rely on guidance to guide us. All responses to this pandemic.
Okay, Lisa, Arnold?
Same question?
Oh, same question, yes. You'll be answering the same question. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing the district?
Okay. Challenges are definitely the eviction crisis that is looming. We need to cancel rent. We need to make sure that there's an answer for people who have mortgages, especially people who have mortgages that depend on those who have rent coming in. We need a response for that. Mortgage forbearance. We need to cancel. Interest payments. Move the payments for mortgage to the end of it. We need to make sure that that is extended for at least 12 months. I think that's looming. Because we've got a lot of people who haven't been able to pay their rent or their mortgage because of job loss right now, and we need to make sure that people can stay in their homes, because it costs more to help someone once they've been kicked out of their home than it does to help them stay in their homes to begin with, which brings you to affordable housing is definitely a crisis. It's been a crisis for a long time, and this is just making it more obvious. So we definitely need to help with affordable housing. In addition, I would like to see, I think that the education, school is going to start in a couple of weeks. And I know that there's a lot of concern. I've been speaking with voters, with parents, with teachers. One of the big concerns is for the buildings themselves with the ventilation, and bringing kids into those schools where the ventilation isn't well taken care of. It's not something that we've basically ignored our buildings for a long time. So we need to be bringing the buildings up to better code. Not something that can happen right away. And with this pandemic, with the virus still out there, I think there's a concern of keeping our kids healthy and keeping our teachers healthy. And what's the school year going to look like? That's definitely a couple of the things that are on the minds of the voters out there. And amongst all of that, we're dealing with racism being a structural problem within the way that our system is built, so that all of the issues that we're going through are felt doubly by our communities of color. And we need to make sure that whatever answers that we have, we are addressing the problems, especially in the communities of color.
Very good. Well, this is kind of a similar question, but a little bit different for you, Lisa Arnold. What if you were elected, what would you jump into first? What are your priorities for legislation?
My priorities, the first thing that I'd personally like to see is there was a comprehensive mental health bill that was unanimously passed by the Senate, and it's sitting in committee with the House. And I believe that because it was unanimously passed, there are so many things within that bill that are important. Consistency of care for mental health with your mental health provider. If you change insurance companies and now all of a sudden your counselor is out of network, being able to stay with that counselor at the same price is one of the big things with that. If that doesn't get passed in this session, I want to see that brought up, because I think during this pandemic, it's become even more obvious that people's mental health is definitely something that we need to be paying attention to. I think people are realizing just how important it is to help people stay with their providers so they can get the care that they need. So I would love to see that particular bill passed. It is my passion project. I also think that we need to look at the climate change bill, and there were a lot of things in the economic reform bill that also involved doing things with the climate change and making sure that we lifted the caps on solar energy and bringing more solar energy and renewable energy jobs to the area, which would also address climate change. So I think those are a couple of things that I'd really like to see us get passed right away. And there's plenty more, but we'll start with those.
Okay, Vanna.
Thank you. So my day one priorities, if I am fortunate enough to be elected, first, public health. We must ensure the safety of the most vulnerable, among us, our seniors, people with underlying conditions, communities of color, healthcare providers, first responders, and essential workers. And economic recovery is another one. My priority is getting people back to work safely, and rebuilding local economy. I'll use my public service experience for more than 2 decades and skill set to help our communities get the attention and funding we deserve, and education and child care, another important priorities. Parents, students, teachers, and staff, they need to know that we're prioritizing health, and making sure at-risk students don't fall behind. And I'll fight to ensure the Student Opportunity Act, which has been implemented last year, is implemented and fully funded.
Thank you. Okay. The bells for the time are very, very light, and so it's hard to hear them. Okay, the next question is, how do you think the state and Governor Baker is handling the pandemic? And do you think that there should be changes in how he's doing that? Let's start with Vanna.
Great. In terms of the pandemic, he's doing good. He follows the science. Keep people in their home. He's containing the pandemic. So he and Mayor, Marty Walsh, they both doing a good job of keeping us safe. Especially, you have to be smart, and I think the task force and the governor and the mayor, they follow the science, and so follow the science. We have to making smart decision when it comes to this pandemic. We are not there. We're still in a pandemic, and so we need to be very, very, follow the science. And other states are not following the science, and look what is happening to them. And so we're here in Massachusetts because we follow the science. We have a task force. We have everyone coming together to flatten the curve. We're in a good situation because of that.
Okay, Lisa Arnold.
I would disagree. I believe that we could do better. We could have done better. I think that we could have shut down a lot sooner. Having not shut down a lot sooner, I think it's dragged this out a lot further. And now we are at a point where we're about to start school, and I believe the second wave is coming. If you look at the RT number, which is the rate of infection number, when we started to open back up, we were in the green, we were below 1. We are now, I believe, last time I looked, back at 1.15. I think it's good that we stopped opening up further and not going to the next phase. But I feel, especially if we're going to bring the kids back to school, we are going to end up during flu season, we're going to be right back where we were in March. So I think we need to slow it down. We need to do more testing and more tracing. Regular testing and tracing, especially for essential workers. We need to make sure that we have the Emergency Sick Pay Act passed, so that the people who are essential workers and need to be out there if they're sick, are allowed to stay home. Their companies need to be incentivized to make sure that the people stay home, and we need to make sure that there's more tracing and more testing diligently.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well,
if I may ask for a rebuttal, please, Wendy?
Oh, yes, you may. Okay, 30-second rebuttal.
Sure. Yeah. No, we followed science. We had at the time, now it's all new here. We never been through this before, and so what I think Baker get a good get a good hold on it, a good data. So at the time, what we had for data to follow, and now we had more data, and so again, we followed science we had at the time, and so. And he's doing a good job, and the mayor and the task force.
Okay, thank you. You're both progressive candidates with a lot of overlap in the policies that you're putting forward. Is there a concern you're splitting the progressive vote? I'll go with Lisa.
I am not concerned about this. I have, my background is in the private sector. I bring a completely different perspective to this. I believe that my candidacy, the way I run it, I'm showing that transparency is very important to me. I'm extremely open. I think if you follow my Facebook page, my candidate Facebook page, I'm very open about where I stand on positions. And I believe that the most important thing we can do as a representative is be available to people, and I believe my candidacy has shown the type of campaign that I run is exactly the type of representative that I will be. I have been endorsed by the Progressive Massachusetts, which is the #1 most progressive organization in Massachusetts, as well as New Progressive Leaders. And so I do believe that my progressive stance is speaks for itself, and as well as me being extremely transparent in my campaign and reaching out to voters.
Okay, thank you. Vanna.
I do worry about that. Representative Nangle can split over vote and win. I believe I have been here for a long time, for almost 30 years, on the ground, working in the community on every issues, on every projects, on every collaboration initiatives. People see me sometimes 5 times a day. We see the same people 5 times a day working to improve, to better the quality of life of this community. And the endorsement I have received endorsement from the Massachusetts Women Political Caucus, SEIU 1199, the Massachusetts AFL-CIO, the Massachusetts Teachers Association, the Massachusetts Nurses Association, the UTL, and the Carpenters Council Union. So I have received, and I'm actually have confirmed 5 more endorsements coming this week.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, do you think that there should be government term limits for state offices? And if so, how many terms would be good? Vanna.
That's a really good question. I mean, that would be up to the legislation. That would be up to the voters. That would be up to leadership to discuss from both chambers, both House and the Senate, to come in discussion. Should there be a term limit? I'm running for my first, I'm a first-time candidate running for my first term, and so I just want 1 term to begin.
Okay. And how about you? Term limits?
I believe that term limits do make sense. I think that, personally for me, a decade seems like plenty of time to get things done, and a lot changes in a decade. So it seems right. I think that we should absolutely have term limits on the speaker. The speaker right now has way too much control in the House, and so I believe that the speaker should have term limits very specifically. And I also, this is my first time running, and I know that you don't get a whole lot done in your first 2 years, but I believe that if you make the right connections and you work with people and you establish relationships and you also establish mentorship, you can make sure that the people that follow you can continue your work.
Yeah.
Well, how many terms would you suggest, Lisa Arnold?
I believe a decade, so 5 seems like a good number.
Oh, okay. And Vanna, did you have a rebuttal?
Just a response, just a response. Term limits, as we all remember, was a gimmick from Newt Gingrich, if everyone old enough to remember Newt Gingrich. And Democrats don't play that. And so that was a gimmick. And so again, the voters elect, elect is the decision maker. They elect you. So if if they continue to elect you, then you should honor their decision, their vote.
Okay, thank you. Do you think that state government should be more transparent? And if so, how would you work to make it more transparent? Let's see, I believe Lisa.
Massachusetts legislature is actually the least transparent, or one of the least transparent legislatures in the country. The number of people that it takes in order to stand for a roll call in Massachusetts is one of the highest thresholds. So I think that we need to come in line with other states and have a lower threshold for standing for a roll call vote. In addition, the governor's office, the State House, and the Senate are the only offices or the only areas within the state of Massachusetts that are not subject to the public records law. And we are the only state, maybe there's one other, where that is true. And there's no reason why those offices should be exempt from the public records law. So I believe that we need to change the rules so that committees are more transparent and do have to publish their meeting minutes and people who speak. In addition, that's something that's the rules that have to change. Prior to, in addition to that, what I can do is make my votes public and stand for roll call whenever issues are important. So thank you.
Vanna.
Open votes and roll calls should be always there. The voters deserve to know the elected official that they elected to represent on their behalf should be open votes and roll calls. Open process throughout the time that the elected officials was elected to. And I always say all the time, sunshine, the best disinfectant. It needs to be open, it needs to be clear, it needs to be transparent.
Okay. Vanna, we'll stick with you. This is a two-part question. Lowell, among other Massachusetts communities, is facing a housing crisis, with many low to moderate income residents being pushed out of Lowell for lack of affordable housing. This is, of course, has only been exacerbated by the pandemic and related economic crisis. What short-term solutions do you support to avoid a potential wave of evictions once the moratorium is lifted?
Right. The extension, the eviction foreclosed moratorium that extended to October by Governor Baker, it was necessary, it was emergency, but we need an extension longer than that. We need another year or so. You can't throw a family out onto the street, during this pandemic. We need to keep everyone safe. We need to, everyone will take a hit to keep people in their home. The bank, the homeowners, the renters. So we need to all come to this and work together so that no families, are thrown out onto the street. My personal experience when I was a teenager, I was homeless when I was pregnant and after I was pregnant with my daughter. So I know firsthand to not have a place to live, a stable housing, place to live. And, another cost of this pandemic, it is the cost. So how do we come together and keep families in home, and homeowners not foreclosed, and bang, they need to also, receive their, their money as well. So yes, another extension to another year to keep everyone safe and healthy.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to mute yourself when you're not speaking. It's going to make the flow of the Zoom thing better. But then as soon as you're ready to speak, please unmute. So Lisa Arnold.
So we definitely need to extend the eviction and foreclosure moratorium through the end of the state of emergency, plus 12 months to help people get back on their feet. We need to make sure that eviction notices that are going out now, there is a way to stop them. Even though there's a moratorium on, people are still getting notices, and we need to make sure that anyone who is facing eviction right now and getting a notice has legal representation. So we need to make sure that we have lawyers available to help them to make sure they stay in their homes. That's very important. In addition, we need to make sure that we pass emergency sick pay so that people have the funding to help them stay in their homes, to help them keep paying their bills, keep getting their payments, and being able to keep their jobs and not lose their jobs during this time, so that those who are currently employed can stay employed and can continue to pay their rent. So I think that's important. And I would say that that in addition, all right, I'll stop there. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is sort of a follow-up question to that one. For long-term solutions, how would you balance Lowell's growth and development as a city with the need to increase affordable housing for economically disadvantaged people? So, Lisa, but you have to unmute. Okay.
Yep, I should be good. All right, we have gotten the Community Preservation Act passed, and we can use funding from that to give us additional homes. We need to, it would be really great at the state level to pass the rent cap, the law to allow for transfer fees and rent caps. Right now, there is a moratorium. No municipality can pass a law that will allow us to allow Lowell to put a question on the ballot asking for transfer fees, funding, or even rent stabilization act. And each municipality is different. So I think the state needs to lift that ban so that each municipality can make the decision on their own whether or not that is an important thing to do. And I believe for Lowell, it is something that we definitely need. Lowell is Lowell is the fourth highest rent in the state right now, and Massachusetts has the third highest rent in the country. So it's definitely something that's a problem. And so more inclusionary zoning, communication, taking care of the Community Preservation Act, taking advantage of that, and the transfer fees and rental caps are things that we definitely need to be doing.
Okay, yes, great question. I'll work, on those issues. If I'm elected on Beacon Hill, again, we need to increase number of housing units by public, private partnerships, eminent domain, takings of abandoned properties, develop of public lands. We need to come up and create a zoning ordinance. For long term, we need those ordinances to in the affluent area of Lowell for so long. I mean, do we need the affluent area of Lowell to have 2 acres of land? We need to be able to share that and build affordable housing in that area as well to help to help our neighbors, to help our unhoused neighbor, affordable housing. I mean, with this pandemic, we had a housing crisis before. Wendy, like you said earlier, this pandemic has exacerbated the housing crisis. And if we come out with some type of development for all, I believe other city has done this, development for all, or zoning ordinance to build affordable housing in the affluence area, especially here in the city of Lowell, and that would help, decrease the the housing crisis for our unhoused. And I can bring results down. That what brings the results of the housing crisis down a little bit.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question is about homelessness. Vanna, do you believe that a housing first approach to homelessness is best? And what steps should we take to alleviate this problem, which is pretty severe in Lowell?
Yes, I am in support of housing first, and that is the approach I believe the city manager and the city council, our Lowell City Council also, that's their approach as well. Without stable housing, I mean, if you need mental health service, I have a relative who, who's in crisis and who needs mental health crisis, and I am the primary decision maker for this relative for more than 2 years now. And if you're trying to survive on the street, and it's already hard enough to get mental health services, but without stable housing, without stable housing, that's even much harder. So stable housing and then mental health, it all comes together. But a stable home, mental health issues really, it's a very complicated, our housing homelessness is very complex. But however, a housing, first approach is, and then be able to, to address mental health services.
Thank you. Okay, Lisa Arnold.
Yes, I definitely support the Housing First initiative. I actually saw it in action in San Jose, California, where the corporate headquarters of the company that I worked for was, and they were able to do a lot with Housing First. Homelessness is any people who are homeless suffer from many different reasons why they lost their home. And what's important about Housing First is it addresses first getting you into the home, getting you into a home so that you're stable, so you have a place to live. And then if what you need is job training, if what you need is mental health services, if what you need is just to find a job, if what you need is childcare, there are many things that you need in a Housing First, or if you're homeless, it's not necessarily just the home, there are other services. And what Housing First does is it allows you first to get into the home so that you have a stable place, and then assesses what are your other needs. And those needs could be multiple things. And just because you're homeless doesn't mean you're suffering from mental illness, and just because you're mentally ill doesn't mean you're going to end up homeless. So we need to separate the homelessness and the mental illness. I think that we did not do a good job of taking care of our homeless during the pandemic, and they didn't have a place to go. And so unfortunately, it's become even more obvious just how serious the problem is.
Okay.
Yeah, we do a lot. We do a lot, for our homelessness and for many, many, many reasons. But we need to, to keep our homelessness, our unhoused brothers and sisters, stable. And we can do more.
Do you support the concepts of the Green New Deal for Massachusetts, with economic growth through sustainable energy and conservation, transportation, and carbon pricing? Lisa Arnold.
Yes, I signed on to the Massachusetts Green New Deal early. I believe that the Green New Deal will bring more jobs to the area, and it also makes sure that if people lose jobs, that they get retrained in jobs that are of an equal measure of the type of work they were already doing, rather than having to be completely retrained for a different type of job. So that is important, that we keep doing that we make sure those who do lose their jobs, as we move from fossil fuel industry to the more renewable energy industry. In addition, we need to make sure that there's a plan for getting us to 2050. Right now, the way that the House and the Senate are passing laws, they're doing it piecemeal. So rather than taking bold action and making big changes and big things that it's times up, that we need to make sure and not do piecemeal, but that we do take bold action, and the Green New Deal does that.
Thank you. Vanna?
I do support the Green New Deal that was sponsored by Senator Ed Markey and Congresswoman AOC. And so, importantly, I've been endorsed by 350 Mass, 350 Mass Environmental Group, and we need to rid us of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels, I mean, immediately, and to do that by 2030 and then 2050. Fossil fuels and promote all manner of renewables, and move towards green energy, and move towards electric safe vehicles, promotion of these technologies in all state construction, and that will bring green energy jobs, and especially to this Lowell area. And so, yes, I'm in support of the Green New Deal.
Okay, very good. Let's see. The next question, or Lisa, did you get that one? Yes, you asked that. I asked that. Vanna, what actions would you take to reduce the state's carbon footprint?
That's a really good question. Again, electric state vehicles. All state construction has to be technologies, has to be green, has to be smart. Promotion, the promotion of these technologies, in all state construction. Any constructions that's coming anywhere to the district or anywhere across the Massachusetts or across the country, it needs to promote green technologies in any construction going forward.
All right, I would want to first lift the cap on solar net metering. We need to make sure that we have that, and we need to encourage solar community credits for people and for the community credits. We need offshore wind. It is 3 to 5 times more power than onshore wind. So moving forward with the offshore wind program, we need to require all new government vehicles to be electric, and all new buildings should have require passive solar on any new construction. In addition, our rivers, we need the combined sewage overflows during storms were 880 gallons of sewage in 2018. Lowell is the second biggest contributor to sewage during storms. So we need to create a wet weather treatment plant. That's actually in the plans. It's going to cost $30 million. And if we cannot get state or federal funding for that, it's going to fall to the ratepayers. So we need to work to get funding for that.
Thank you. All right, moving on. See, Lisa, do you support the DEI letter that asked the Lowell City Council to declare that racism is a public health crisis? Why or why not? And then what would you do at the state level to work for racial equity and dismantle systemic racism?
I do support the letter. I actually spoke in favor of it at the city council meeting. And my personal opinion on it is what the people of color are asking for is what we should be listening to. They listened, they spoke, we said we were listening. If we really meant it, we would have passed what they were asking for. At the state level, there are legislators of color who have come up with 4 things that they believe we need to be doing at the state level, 10 total for four at the federal level, four at the state level, and two at the municipal level. At the state level, one of the things that they brought up was the post-training, the police officer safety and, sorry, I can't remember what the T said, safety, security and training. And I believe that it's a start, but it's not enough, because if you want to change something, training is never enough. You need to change the culture. I've got experience making major changes within organizations, and organizational change requires cultural change. And you need to have leaders who are willing to step up and model the behavior that they expect. And until we have leaders who are willing to do that and step out, we aren't going to be able to see the change. And it won't be effective. Thank you.
Thank you. Vanna?
You know, I signed to declare racism is a public health crisis. I actually been part of that DEI consortium since it started in last year. So I've been a member of DEI since last August when we started. And so I, you know, as a minority, as a woman of color, I have experienced racism, discrimination, and so I have, you know, been told to go back to my country, and I have been called, police have been called on me simply because I was sitting in a car waiting for a friend to arrive home because simply because I was Asian, you know, sitting in a car waiting for a friend to get home. My fault was because I got there too early, you know, until my friend got home to let me in. And so, yes, I signed that. I fully supported that, and I've been part of that DEI, you know, since it started. And on Beacon Hill, if I'm fortunate to be elected, I'll be looking, you know, for equity in jobs, housing, taxes, justice, education, medical care. I've been on these issues for more than 2 decades, and a lived personal experience to speak for it.
Thank you. Let's see. What should be the state's approach to protect the safety and the rights of immigrants? Do you support the Safe Communities Act for Massachusetts? Vanna?
I do. Safe to Community Acts, it needs to be passed. You know, we need, regardless of their status. You know, we're all immigrants here. Families belong together. They don't need to be in fear, just driving, you know, to work, or driving to a medical appointment, or driving to their children to school. They don't need to have that fear. They should be, you know, they should feel not to have fear. And then for you know, victims of violent crimes, victim of domestic violence, you know, they need to be able to come forward and not fear to report those crimes. You know, we need a fair and clear path to citizenship. We're all immigrants here, and they should be welcomed and not caged. And as an immigrant and refugee myself, I completely, wholly support Safe Community Act.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yes, I also support the Safe Communities Act. I think immigrants are a vital part of our community, and no immigrant should feel that no person should feel persecuted and feel afraid to come to the police if there is an issue. And it's important to recognize that the police officers here are not paid to do the work of the federal government. That's a completely different budget. It's a completely different set aside, and our local law enforcement and our state law enforcement should not be doing the job of an organization that who has their own set of funding. So just from a funding perspective, if we want to keep our citizens safe, our local citizens safe, we need to make sure that they feel safe and that they feel comfortable walking into a police station to report a crime.
Thank you. Okay, let's stay with the police right now and Do you support bills in the State House that change the process of police oversight and limit qualified immunity for police misconduct? Lisa Arnold.
Yes, I believe that qualified immunity is something that we need to have, that needs to be restricted. It's the changes that were set forth need to be adopted. There are other bills in the Police Reform Act that I wish we would have seen, tear gas being another one. It's been banned since banned against foreign countries since before World War II. There's no reason we should be using tear gas on our own US citizens. And I was disappointed that that did not pass. There are other areas that need to be looked at as far as data. Each municipality has their own different challenges and the data tells what that is. But as far as the qualified immunity, yes, I believe that we should, that qualified immunity is something that should be removed.
Vanna?
I support that law. I support that law that, you know, we need better vetting, we need better training, we need better supervision. Cops can commit crimes and escape liability, okay? And so we need common sense police reform, which actually passed by wide margin. Even the Speaker of the House supported that. So cops that committed crime cannot be shielded behind the badges, and they need to be held accountable. They need to be held responsible, and for both criminal charges and civil charges as well.
Thank you. There's been a movement to defund the police. Should we redistribute funding away from the police into other community support projects? Vanna?
Defunding the police, and this is a state rep, seat. The decision to defund the police should be up to if we're talking about the city of Lowell, that should be the city council who makes that decision. You know, again, I am for police reform, and they need to be licensed. They need certification. You know, funding is always up for examination, but licensed police officer is must, and it's overdue. I mean, a barber or a nurse, right? A nurse has to be licensed, and if a nurse committed, you know, criminal acts, and their license will be lost, and they'll never find another job again. We have a police officer who committed crime, get fired, and then, you know, go and find another job somewhere else. So police officer needs to be licensed. They need the certification, better vetting, better supervision, and better training.
Thank you very much.
So yes, defunding the police is something that is at the municipal level. However, at the state level, I believe looking at the data, doing an analysis of the data, I believe data does tell us a story, and every municipality has different needs. And until we understand what those needs are, it's hard to make decisions, the right decision. One thing that is important to note is, where was I going with that? That, I'm sorry, my train of thought went completely off there, and I can't remember what I was going to say, and my minute is going to be up.
It was about
oh yes, that the police are being asked to do a whole lot more than they were trained for and that they're qualified for. And I don't think it's fair to the police to be asking them to be social workers, to be asking them to go to head off to deal with a mental health crisis when there are people better equipped and better able to handle that. So that's another reason why it would be really good to look at the data, is to make sure that we aren't asking the police to do things that they aren't trained for, that isn't their job. And I think they would appreciate that.
Thank you. Education. How would you ensure
I think
that
Vanna
all,
has a request, follow-up request.
oh,
Vanna, you're muted.
have to unmute, Vanna.
Unmute.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't support defund, and I support review and reallocation where needed.
okay, very good. So this is for Lisa Arnold. How would you ensure that all students in the state get equal access to the education they deserve during this atypical time? And do you support opening the schools in person for in-person learning here in Massachusetts now that the pandemic numbers have gone down?
No, I don't think we're ready to open. I think that we need to be listening to the parents and the teachers as far as what's going on. I think there are people who do need to have the schools reopened, the people who have really serious learning disabilities and need that face-to-face instruction, people who have childcare issues that are essential workers that absolutely need that. The numbers of those people are few and far between, and those should be the ones that get priority. We need to take a look at how much space we have, the ventilation in the schools. It's not ready. Are there other places that haven't opened up yet that aren't going to be having classes that we could take advantage of to be able to have more space, fewer children, and fewer teachers in there? If we can do that, then absolutely. Otherwise, we need to come up with better solutions, and we also need to make sure that people have internet access equity.
Thank you. Vanna?
As a mother of two children, you know, both my children have been home since we went into quarantine. We need to do it safely and equitably, and you know, people need to help. You know, with remote learning, and we need to fund our schools to meet these new needs. And so, until we need to follow science, we need to be smart. As I mentioned earlier, my daughter, who has special needs, you know, who hasn't received her services since March, and my husband and I are doing that, you know, at home. And so, I have a family member who has underlying conditions. If I were to send my son or my daughter into a school, they may come back with coronavirus. So until it is safe to do so, and be smart and follow the science, you cannot open the school until it's safe.
Thank you so much. We are getting very close to the end, and I want to make sure you have your closing statements. I just want to remind everyone at home that the primary election is September 1st, unless you got a mail-in ballot, which you should send in as soon as you get it. So let's go to closing statements. You have about a minute. Vanna.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you for the sponsors and for the opportunity to tell you who I am and what my priorities will be should I be elected to this important seat. In just 19 days, you'll be voting for the candidate you believe is the best candidate to represent our interests in this district on Beacon Hill. My background and experience in public service for almost 30 years on all of these issues, so urgent today, and my personal commitment to this community began years prior to this race, makes me that candidate. I will be ready on day one with no other interests or concerns other than to tackle the economic and pandemic issues we face today and tomorrow. My history as a survivor and someone who gets things done should give you confidence as you cast that vote for me. And should I receive the honor of this office, I'll hold that seat with the integrity, dignity, and respect. Your vote deserve and the respect that your votes deserve. And I'll be accessible to you and will respond to you. And I'm asking that you cast that vote for me. Thank you so much.
Okay, Lisa Arnold.
Thank you very much. This has been a really great experience. I love the fact that we have this opportunity to civically engage and get the people involved. So I hope everyone who was listening enjoyed the experience as much as I did. I think this is a great way to see democracy on display. As your next state representative, I will be available full-time to I will hold town halls. I will make sure that there are interpreters available for people who speak other languages. I will have regular communication with people, and I think that the way I have run this campaign is very indicative. What you've seen me doing out there, talking to people, getting on the phone with voters, being very transparent and following through. Responsiveness is extremely important to me. And so when I speak with a voter, I follow up with each one of them. And that is exactly what I expect to do as a state representative. And so I hope that I can count on your vote on September 1st or during early voting, or send in your ballot today. And I hope that I earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to the audience for joining us. Have a good night. Be well.